Yo, what's going on, everyone? It's Brian and Jim here with DrinkABeerandPlayAGame, and today we're continuing our look at the Capcom games with Ghosts and Goblins for the NES.
Originally released to the arcades in 1985, this was developed and published by Capcom. It eventually came out on the NES, which we're going to be reviewing today, as well as a ton of collections for systems like the PlayStation, the Saturn, the Game Boy Color, and a ton of home computer ports. This game is... this is one of those NES hard games, and it really is the definition of it. In Japan, it's known as Makimura.
I just hate you now.
Yay, I'm winning. And, yeah. I should have... Anyway. This game's hard as balls, but is it as hard as everyone says? Let's find out.
Yes, it is!
Yeah, it is.
As I've mentioned in my previous two videos for Capcom games, you know I feel that Capcom has a very particular style, and this game, to a degree, still carries that forward, but in my eyes, it's not as varied as the previous titles we reviewed. For one thing, the sprites, they look okay, but there's something that's just kind of off, even about the main character. I mean, Arthur just kind of looks kind of goofy, I'm not gonna lie, and all the enemies... like this little pig in a blanket thing. I guess it's supposed to be a ghost. Everything just kind of looks a little... I don't know how to describe it, but I feel like they could have done a lot better, and seeing what they've done in Mega Man and DuckTales, I know they could have done better. The levels themselves, because you're going to see them so many times over and over because of how goddamn hard it is, they tend to be very repetitive, and something like this cave level, that blue is just jarring to me. And when you get to the towns, I just feel like it's a little too fuzzy, a little too staticky, and even considering the fact that this is an early game, I actually don't hate the graphics. I'm just pointing out all the minor things I dislike. What I will give it credit for, the animations of the enemies and everything, looks pretty good. And when there are too many enemies on the screen, you will notice a decent amount of flickering. So all in all, keeping in mind that this is one of the earlier Capcom games, we both gave it 7s. Still looks pretty damn good. I'm just nitpicking because we all know how good this game is. I just have to give our personal opinions on this. But when it comes to beer, I'm just going to give 1 for Arthur being a little bitch and letting his girl get taken away so easily. What is he, Jim?
Bitch! Hey, wait! The sound. Alright, I'm going to be straight up honest here. We're giving this a higher score than it probably deserves just because we love that main song. It's iconic as can be, so... That being said, there are a few different music tracks. None of them are as good as that iconic one. There's some sound effects, but it's still pretty minimalistic. And then there's the nice little goddamn death jingle, which you're going to hear over, and over, and over, and over. And then the screen with the map, and you're going to hear that jingle over, and over. And then the goddamn ghosts, and they're just going to get... all the goddamn time. It's just, you never stop hearing it. You just keep hearing it because you keep dying. And, okay, I gotta calm down. Thank God it has that main song. We both gave it 7s, and when it comes to beer, I'm gonna add 2 beers. 1 for that death jingle, and 2 for the...
The control is the number one area where Jim and I disagree in this game, and it's simple because Jim still doesn't understand the concept of control on how we set up.
I get control!
He doesn't get it. But let's face facts. This game has 2 buttons, a jump and an attack. Sounds simple enough. Enough platformers out there have done that perfectly well with no problems. This game, one of the major things it needs you to do is jump on platforms. And one of the buttons is constantly fucked up for me, and that is the jump button. The jump is delayed, it's slow, you can't really maneuver that well with it. And you talk about pixel perfect, sometimes I almost get in this glitch where I can continue to jump. It fucks up all the time. The attack button, let's face it, you are just bashing that all the time. So like I said about other games where I hate the fact that you just have to bash a button, unless of course you're using a turbo controller, that's really annoying, and that is a sign of bad control. So for me, this game, part of what makes it so hard is the fact that you have so many enemies that take so many hits. Even if you get the elusive knife, you're still going to have to throw so many at these goddamn enemies. And then the fact that the jumps will cause you to get so many bullshit deaths, that's just unacceptable in my eyes. I know some people might love the game for that difficulty factor, but for me, when the game is hard, pretty much based on the control, I have a problem with that. So I gave it a 5, Jim gave it a 7, and when it comes to beers, you know what? I'm adding 3, and they're all for Jim for always fucking up.
Alright, the gameplay. Another area where me and Bride vary slightly, but not as much as before. Alright, let's go over some simple things. You get a number of different weapons in the game, but let's be honest here. I think my dear, close, personal friend James Rolfe can say it better than I ever could.
Jim, just because you're both nerds doesn't mean you're friends.
Bride, I act like I'm his friend all the time. He just doesn't talk back to me, that's all.
Do you blame him?
No, not really. So yeah, the knife's pretty goddamn important. Outside of that, we said there's the platforming, but here's the problem with this game. It's a side-scrolling, run-and-gun kind of platformer, but this game's just bullshit. I'm sorry. This game has so many bullshit parts. It's made, it was an arcade game first, so it was made to be a quarter muncher, but this game is just goddamn ridiculous. All the newbie traps, all the just horrific, there's no learning curve. It's just, here you go, fucker, start playing, you're gonna die. And you're gonna die, and you're gonna die, and you're gonna die again. Here's another big problem I have with this game. When you die, you get that map screen that scrolls across to show you where you are. But guess what? It's not like you can just, click out of it. No, it has to load the whole goddamn map. And sure, it takes 5 goddamn seconds, but when you die 5,000 times, and you see it over and over again, I know where the fuck I died, I've been on this level for a goddamn half hour, I don't need to see the map again. I have a problem with games that are really more based on memorization than actual skill, and yeah, I know there is a lot of skill involved in this game, but so much of it is just knowing exactly what to do, exactly where the enemies come from, and exactly where to jump, when to jump, and with what weapon to shoot and when to fire. It pisses me off. I'm an old man, I don't have the goddamn time for this. That being said, if you're a guy who loves a hard game, this game's right up your alley. It functions well enough. It's a game that I personally don't care for, but I do see the appeal. And it's not like the game isn't hard enough. Thankfully, it isn't one-hit kills, because God forbid, but 2 hits and you're dead? In a game like this? Are you fucking kidding me? With all that being said, Brian gave it a 6, and I gave it a 5. When it comes to beer, I'm gonna add 2 beers for bullshit!
The Originality. Well, this is another one where Jim and I, there's a little bit of a difference, but it's more for struggling, because in our guts, this game felt new for the first time when you played it. Back then, Jim already mentioned, if you want to know the definition of an NES hard game, especially in North America, this is your perfect example, and one of the first games that could really piss you off beyond belief as a child and still to this day. Aside from that, yeah, the story is, I guess, kind of unique. You're still doing the same old thing like you did in Mario and Donkey Kong. You're going and saving your girl, but as I mentioned, the devil is the one who stole her, so now you gotta fight all these monsters. That was interesting enough, but then you add on the fact that, one of my things that I hate about this game, you get that goddamn false ending that tells you, you need to come back through and play through the entire game. That was certainly new. It's nothing Jim and I enjoyed, but hey.
No! No, it wasn't!
It maybe wasn't the first game to do that, but to our memories, when you're playing through the NES and the generation we were at, this is the first one we can think of when we think of those early screens. Later games will continue to pull that bullshit, but god damn was that annoying. So, keeping all that in mind, I gave it a 6, and Jim gave it a 5. I'm gonna add 1 truly angry, bullshitty beer for that goddamn false ending.
The replayability. Well, there's only one true ending, but you have to play through the goddamn game twice to get it. And the game's hard as dick. So normally when a game's just hard, we give it 3s. But Brian wanted to be a little fancy pants, so since you have to play through it twice, he decided to give it a 6. And I gave it a 5 just because I'm a bitch like that.
Jim, it's arithmetic.
Don't you arithmetic me.
I know my calculus.
Says that you plus me equals us.
God damn it.
Great song. Anyway, when it comes to beers, I'm just gonna add 2 beers for playing through the game twice. How fun!
Overall, I think a lot of gamers have to come to terms with something. This might be a game that you take immense pride in if you were one of the few that could actually go through and beat it legit, not with an emulator, not with a turbo controller, and you beat it twice to see the true ending. And I think those people that were willing to invest that time were like, well shit, it was that hard, I have to say it was a great game. Jim and I, especially Jim, he couldn't deal suffering through it. He tried and tried, couldn't do it. I've suffered through it once, beat it that first time, saw that bullshit ending, and you know what? For some reason, I still decided to try and torture myself and do it again, but every time I come back to this game, at best, I'll be willing to go through it that first time. There's no way I'm investing time to go through that second ending. I can appreciate what people love about this game, and if you really like a challenge, that's all well and good, but challenge does not always equal a good game. As I said, I had my problems with control, Jim had his problems with the gameplay in some of those areas, so while it's not a perfect game, it's also not an awful game. We both had to give this a 6. We know, once again, this is usually in people's top 10s for favorite NES games, but come on, let's call a spade a spade. Let's just call a spade a spade. This game is not that good. So when we combine all of our scores together, it rounds out to a 6. Quite frankly, given what we just explained, that's the best you're going to get out of us. We think that's fair, it's still above average, but this game has plenty of flaws. Only play this game if you really enjoy torturing yourself, or you want to test yourself and your patience.
Or if you just want something to play for Halloween.
There's a certain other developer that makes a better Halloween-themed game that wasn't picked for this goddamn month that would have been much better! Typically, when I make a beer pairing with such a difficult game, I usually like to go for a beer that doesn't have much alcohol, but fuck that. In this case, since this game is so hard, I'm going with Ghost in the Machine from the Parish Brewing Company out of Louisiana. This is an 8% double IPA. It's got a ton of flavor. It's one of the most well-respected double IPAs coming out of Louisiana. And you know what? It fits the mood. So if you can, get yourself a 6-pack of this, and then try to torture yourself with this difficult but fun game. And remember to drink your beers and play your games responsibly. As always, guys, thanks for checking out this video, and if you enjoyed it, make sure you give us a thumbs up, leave some comments, or better yet, why not subscribe? Till next time, guys, cheers.